Hey everyone, I'm Joe and today I'm going to be doing my wrap up for April. April was a really good reading month in total. Yet again, for the fourth month running, I read 18 books. The previous 3 months were kind of accidental that they happened to be 18 every single month. This month, not so accidental. I kind of wanted to match it. It's just a personal little, I don't know, thing of mine that I would like to do. Although frankly, I'm not that bothered if I don't manage it all year round because that would be extremely difficult, I suppose. Anyway, I've read a good mixture of genres and indeed a good quality of book in general. Every book was at least good, if not excellent, and without further delay, I'll get straight on to talking about the books in question. So the first 3 books are Something Fresh, very shiny, Leave It to P. Smith, and finally Uncaught Thread in the Springtime. And yes, that is a very large black pig in a bath, which might give you an indication of just how mad and deranged these books are. Now these are obviously by P.G. Wodehouse. P.G. Wodehouse is an English author. He wrote in the early 20th century, anything from about 1905 roughly to about 1940, I think, with his sort of main writing time. And he wrote some very interesting books in that time, of which these are a good example. These are the first 3 books in the Blending series, although they're not in any exact order. I mean, there is a technical order to them, but it doesn't really matter too much about that. Frankly, I'm just reading them that for simplicity's sake, frankly. And these are humorous books. Blendings is a big estate in the country, sort of aristocracy, and it is all about one sort of posh upper class aristocrat, which is Lord Emsworth. He is an eccentric, unsurprisingly, and along with his son, his manservant and butler, and various other people that come into the books are deranged, but really, really good. I mean, they're all very short, as you can tell. I mean, they're no more than, I don't know, 300-ish pages. But all of them are brilliant because they're just fun, well plotted, mad, but they do make sense. And there's lots of things happening in these books that you just really don't expect. Little twists and turns here and there that you just wouldn't expect because they're just so odd, but they do make perfect sense. And I do have the other pile of Blandings books on my shelf just up there, so I'm going to be reading more of these. So yeah, get used to the sight of seeing books with pigs on the spine, frankly, because I'm keen on them. The next 3 books are Borders of Infinity, Brothers in Arms, and Mirror Dance, all by Lois McMaster Bujold. These I read on ebook, so I don't have any books to wave around, although the picture should be up on screen now. These are 3 books out of the Volkozican saga, which is probably the series and book that Lois McMaster Bujold is most well known for. There are 16 books in this series so far. This is a big science fiction series based around the Volkozican family. These are, well, the numbers of the books vary depending on which chronology you go by, because the written order of the books is different from the internal chronology, and that's different from the author's suggested reading order. So I'm going by the author's, Bujold's, reading order myself. So, you may read them in a somewhat different order than I am. I loved these books. The main character of these 3 books, although that's not always certain because some of the books do feature other characters, is Miles Volkozican, and he is a person who basically, when he was born, well, technically before he was born, was his mother was pregnant with him, she had a sort of terrorist attack against her, basically, and Miles has got some disabilities, basically. He wasn't sort of formed properly, and he's got very brittle bones and various other things, physical problems, but he's extremely intelligent, extremely witty, and the way he solves problems is fantastic because it's just the force of his personality and the way he can manipulate people and just get people to do things without even them being aware that they're actually doing what he wants them to. They just think they're doing it on their own bat, and they're not. They're doing exactly what he wants. He's just very good at making people do what he wants, but not in a bad way though. He's not doing it for some evil reasons. He's just trying to get on and, you know, run a mercenary corporation despite the fact he's son of a very powerful lord in this empire. And I loved these books, I really did. And I will do a video about this series eventually once I've read the whole lot. The next 3 books are The Beekeeper's Apprentice, A Multitude Regiment of Women, and finally A Letter of Mary. These are the first 3 books by Laurie R. King in the Sherlock Holmes and Mary Russell series. This is obviously based on Sherlock Holmes. Obviously, it's an alternative sort of idea on it, where after the Arthur Conan Doyle books, Sherlock Holmes has essentially retired and he keeps bees, hence the name of the first book, The Beekeeper's Apprentice. And Mary Russell is a young girl in the first book. When she first meets him, obviously she gets older as the books progress, and they basically realise that they're sort of kindred spirits to each other. They understand each other and they both have the same sort of way of thinking about the world. And these are just absolutely fantastic sort of crime and mystery books, and I will do a separate review on this series overall once I've read at least most of them, if not all of them. So in a few months I'll have that up and done. Obviously it depends how fast I read through the book. Next up we have Coming Home by Patty Jansen. This is an ebook, so the picture of it on screen now. Now this is a science fiction themed thriller. I'm going to be doing a separate review of this in the next few weeks, well, of the series in general, because this is actually the 4th book in the Ambassador series. So there'll be a series review of it. And this is a really good book and indeed series. It starts off focused on one guy. He's a diplomat, Corey Wilson, and there are multiple sort of human-like but alien races in this world. This is not on Earth, however, this is on another planet nearby, and it's just really well written. I really enjoyed these books. I got these almost not on a whim, but I didn't really know much about them. I saw them on Amazon after I'd read a few other series on my Kindle, and they were super low price. I think they were 99p, so I couldn't really say no. And I'm glad I did buy them because they were just really well written. They've got good characters. They've got action, but they've also got interesting diplomatic ideas in them. And the world is also really good. And frankly, these are good books. Next up was Nod by Adrian Barnes. I got interested in this due to James Chatham, whose booktube channel is of the same name, which I'll link in the description box below, of course. This is an interesting science fiction book where essentially one day nobody on Earth can sleep again, apart from a very rare one in roughly 10,000 people. And indeed, the main character is one of these 1 in 10,000 people that can actually still sleep. Sleep is needed for people to stay alive, of course, because frankly you have to have sleep. I will be doing a separate review of this in a week or two, so I'm not going to say too much more now. But I liked it, I didn't love it. There were some little flaws on the book. Basically, the focus of the book was in a different way than what I expected it to be, and indeed a different way than it started off as, which was a little bit, I suppose, disappointing in a way. But it's only a slight thing. I mean, it's still well written. I would still recommend the book. It's just, if you have the same idea in mind when you first pick this book up, you might be a bit surprised, frankly, as I was. But I thought more in that video. Then I read Slow River by Nicola Griffith. This is the 2nd book by Nicola Griffith I've ever read. I only read the first one a few months ago, and I did really enjoy this book. This was a group read for my SFF award-winning book project, of which there will be a video in the upcoming few weeks as well, probably next week in fact. So I'm not going to say too much now because obviously I'll discuss it in rather more detail there. But suffice to say, this was a really interesting book, has some really good ideas. Basically, it starts off with a woman lying naked in an alley, and she's quite badly injured. She doesn't know who she is exactly, and it's a tale of discovery and trying to figure out that who you are is not who you were born as. If you don't want it to be, you can be who you want to be. You know, identity is a choice, not a forced idea on you. And I like this book. I'll talk about it more in a few weeks' time. Next up, I read Tigana by Guy Gavriel Kay. This is easily, by quite a large margin, the largest book I read this month. It is either just under or just over 800 pages. I actually can't quite remember now. No, just under 800 pages. And this is a high fantasy book, of which I love. I'm going to be doing a separate review of this, unsurprisingly, in the next few weeks, because I really like this book. It is the first book by Guy Gavriel Kay that I've read, but it won't be the last, because frankly it had a really interesting plotline, great characters, great world, and frankly everything about the book was frankly great. So I just really enjoyed this book, and I'll talk more about it in the near future. Then there is From Darkest Skies by Sam Peters. This is the debut novel of Sam Peters. This was sent to me by Gonnet, which is one of the only publishers I actually have a contract with, which I am very grateful for. And I'm very grateful that they offered me this book, because it was really, really interesting. I am going to be doing a separate review of this in a few weeks' time, so again, I'm not going to say too much now. But suffice to say, it is a science fiction thriller with some great ideas, some interesting twists on normal thrillers and indeed normal science fiction books, interesting characters, and a few interesting ideas on AI and what makes up a person and what grief is as well. It deals with grief in an interesting way. And yeah, I greatly liked this book, I really did. The next book is another award-winning book, and that is The Timeship by Stephen Baxter. Now, as you may have noticed, in the last 6 months or so, I've read several Stephen Baxter books now, and this one is one that I really enjoyed. It is a very peculiar book. It is science fiction, and this is the authorised sequel to The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, and it follows the story of the time travel from The Time Machine. This time, after he returned at the end of The Time Machine to Victorian London, in this book basically he goes off in his time machine again to try and rescue the person who he left at the end of the first book, H.G. Wells' one, which I'm not going to say the name of in case that might spoil things actually. But suffice to say, this goes in an interesting way. Now, this is written with obviously with reference, indeed, in homage to H.G. Wells' writing and indeed world, but this is definitely Baxter. In this, he uses sort of multiverse and sort of parallel worlds, and also he deals in the paradoxes of time travel really quite heavily. The whole book is basically trying to sort of go into how paradoxes work and how you could theoretically solve them, if that's even possible. But obviously, he is attempting it using a really interesting setting in this book, and I will talk about this in my science fiction award-winning book project video in a few weeks' time anyway. This next book is kind of related to the Baxter, because this time it actually is H.G. Wells, and that is The Food of the Gods. In this book, two scientists essentially discover a substance, the food of the gods, unsurprisingly nicknamed, and this substance, when given to a young creature, it doesn't have to be necessarily a human, it can be animals or even plant life, it causes them to grow about 6 to 7 times as large as you normally would. And this presents problems when you have babies given this and then they grow as adults to 6 or 7 times. So you have 50-foot people basically, so think of the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, but with 5-year-olds essentially growing bigger and bigger. And it's really surprising this book was, because I'd never realised H.G. Wells had written anything with this sense of humour in it. I mean, this actually made me laugh, which I wasn't expecting from H.G. Wells, but every other book by Wells I've read, which I believe so far this is now the 5th, has been a bit more serious and a bit more sort of dark, I suppose you could say. This still has valid points in it, but this uses humour rather than all-out darkness, although it does have some quite dark moments in it, which is surprising as well, especially considering the humour plays into the darkness. And I really like this book. I may review this book in the next few weeks. I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure out if I can actually review it because it's quite a difficult one to talk about, I found. But I'll see. If not though, I would highly recommend this book because it has some really interesting ideas and it's very well written. So the penultimate book I read was Act of Treason by Vince Flynn. This is the 8th book in the Mitch-Rapp series. There are 14 of them written by Vince Flynn in total. There is now a 15th and even a 16th being about to be released, but to be honest, I'm not interested in those two particularly because they're not directly by Vince Flynn, because Vince Flynn died 4 years ago in 2013. This is a good, solid sort of political action thriller. It follows a serial assassin called Mitch Rapp, hence the name of the series, and there's not much I can say about this. He's a serial assassin essentially. He's a sort of one-man counter-terrorist machine, and he goes around killing terrorists and trying to sort of, save America from the bad guys. Essentially, it's very simple ideas in that way, but they are well written. Yes, there are flaws with all the books. Some of the ways he deals with female characters not always ideal, but they're just fun, easy books, and they're ideal between all the heavier books, which is frankly what I love them for. Basically, this is like lead child to me. The great in between other things. They really are. They're very useful for that. And finally, the last book that I read was Solar Lottery by Philip K. Dick. If you didn't know, I really like Philip K. Dick, despite the fact that I haven't actually read a book by him in quite a long time. And indeed, overall, I haven't actually read that many books by him in total. I've only read about 9 or 10 books by him, despite the fact I actually own about 45 also books by him. And indeed, I'll actually own every book he's written by the end of this year, in theory. But I haven't actually read that many. This is an interesting one. This is a world and universe where the president or the ruler of the solar system is selected by a random lottery system. However, there's a problem with this system when it becomes apparent that this system may actually not be as random as everyone thinks. The way you win is by putting your name forward, essentially, and if you win, you are then the sort of absolute ruler in charge of everything. However, the former ruler, if they are still alive, they can officially and indeed perfectly legally, and they're expected to send assassins after their new leader, because obviously, and this is kind of like a well-known and indeed a very popular thing. It's sort of a very popular thing to see the previous leader attempting to send assassins after the new one, which is weird, but it actually works. And this has some really interesting ideas in it when you follow the assassin of the old leader trying to deal with the new one. The assassin is a curious character, let's say. There are some extremely interesting and bizarre twists in it. This is Philip K. Dick, so basically the fact it's bizarre is perfectly normal. And I really like this book. This is a great science fiction book, and I would highly recommend it as well. And in case you're wondering, this is part of the Mariner series of Philip K. Dick books, which are quite a lot of. I only own about 5 so far, but I'll get more of them in total. And I do like this cover design as well. I don't normally mention covers, but I do like this one. And with that said, that is it for this video. So I've read rather a lot of books this month, as I said. I'm not going to try and hold them up because I'm going to end up dropping them all over the floor. If you've read any of these or would like to, then please leave a comment and we can have a discussion. As always, all my social media links as well as links to anybody that I mentioned will be found in the description box below. And with that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.